Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this month's NowSecure webinar. My name is Brian Reed. I will be your host for today's session. We're going to go through a great case study here from our customer and partner VaporStream, looking at Ironclad messaging and secure application development for regulated industries. So as typically happens, I see people are coming in. We've got a few dozen with more to follow. And so I'm going to wait a minute or so until we get started. Again, we're excited to have you join us today. We have a great talk here looking at arguably the world's most secure application for messaging and communications and how we work together, NowSecure and VaporStream, to ensure that security and privacy for their customers. So I'll get us started here as we wait for people to come in. We'll wait about another 30 seconds. Thank you. All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. Once again, I'm Brian Reed. I'm your host on today's webinar, and we're going to go through a great case study today with VaporStream. So as part of getting the ball rolling, I will be joined today by Avi and Christy from VaporStream. They'll introduce themselves in a few seconds, and I have a few notes before we get going here. So first off, today's session will include both presentation and Q&A activities, so you can ask a question at any time using the Ask the Question tab as you see here in your BrightTalk webinar screen. All the questions you can ask as they occur to you, and then we'll collect them and answer them as many as possible at the end, and definitely follow up with you afterwards if we run out of time. So as I said, ask questions as you go. We'll answer them all at the end. Second, today's presentation will be recorded, and we'll be sending a follow-up email that will include a link to the recording and a copy of those slides. We know in many instances people like to share this information across their internal organization, so we want to make the recording and the slides available to you. Third, as we finish out, you'll see a rating section in your BrightTalk screen. We'd very much appreciate if at the end you could rate today's presentation. This will help us make sure we're providing helpful, relevant, interesting content to you in the future, and we do take your feedback very seriously. In some of our prior webinars, we've been asked to present case studies, and so here we are. We have a great guest joining us today. So as I move forward, if you are attending this webinar, you are probably very interested in mobile security. So I want to make you aware of the Mobile Security News Digest from NowSecure called MobSec 5. Every Friday on our blog, we collect and comment on the week's mobile security news to keep you up to date, whether it's Apple or Google from an operating system perspective, or a myriad of mobile applications or security vectors, or new breaches or other news. It's all there. So we encourage you to subscribe and receive MobSec 5 in your inbox by visiting the NowSecure website. So enough of the commercial. Let's move into the meat of today's session. Our agenda today, I'll be introducing our speakers. We'll then roll into a mobile app security landscape and take a look at some benchmark data, and then dig right into VaporStream and their case study. Then we'll follow that up with VaporStream. We'll be talking about how they use NowSecure. We'll give you a quick look at that. And then finally, recommendations from both of our organizations and an open Q&A at the end of the session. And I'll remind you again to use the Ask the Question tab to do that. So I'd like to begin by introducing our speakers. So Avi and Christy, would you like to introduce yourselves to our audience?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Avi Elkoni. I'm VaporStream's CTO and COO. I've been in software for longer than I care to admit, just over 20 years, in a variety of roles, mainly in engineering, and recently in VP of Engineering, and now CTO at VaporStream. I'm in charge of the technical operation and software development. We are an app development company, so software development is kind of important to us, and have worked with NowSecure for a number of years on our app security testing and certification. And Christy?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Christy Purdue-Hinkle. I am the CMO here at VaporStream. I've, like Avi, more years than I would like to say, however, a few more, about 25 years in content, governance, privacy, compliance, and security software in various different roles, from development management to product management, and into marketing roles and strategic roles. I am now the Chief Marketing Officer here, responsible for quite a few things, from messaging, but also work with Avi on some of the product management alignment as well, and certainly have been involved with our relationship with NowSecure and how we go to market with our product and with our app. So Brian? Brian?
Hello, and I'm Brian Reed. I'm here from NowSecure, and I was talking into a muted phone. So I'm the Chief Mobility Officer here, and I'll be your tour guide today, and I'm very excited to have you join us. I've got over 15 years in mobile insecurity, and before that app development, databases, and data warehousing. So I have all the war wounds to prove it. So I'd like to get rolling here a little bit on what's going on in the market and why app security is so important. And it leads with the opening question of, how safe are your mobile apps? I can guarantee you that Vapor Streams are very safe and secure because we partner together. But if you haven't been watching the news, there's been a myriad of breaches this year that have made the press, whether it was the Air Canada breach up north. You may or may not have heard about Strava, but Strava is a fitness tracker backend and leaked all the location information on our military who use Strava training devices, which is pretty horrifying. And then Pizza Hut, you may or may not have heard, breached PII and credit card information. And what's interesting about all three of these is these are all mobile-driven hacks, where the mobile application was used to gather information, surveillance, credentials, or otherwise to in turn breach the back end and steal data. And so while you may be testing your web infrastructure, we find not enough organizations are testing their mobile infrastructure appropriately. Now, we do a series of benchmarks, and so I'm giving you a quick rundown here. We looked at the top 100 financial institution apps on iOS and Android, so 50 on each. What you'll see here actually is a scatter plot of those apps. The way we grade or score the security and safety of an application is kind of like your school grade, so 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, and so on and so forth. Just like at school, you really don't want C's, you definitely don't want D's, and no one wants F's. And so what you'll see on these charts is we plotted on that 0 to 100 on the vertical, and we plotted the count of CVSS scored vulnerabilities on the horizontal. So the further right you are, the more vulnerabilities you have by count. The lower you are, the worse you are, and get a failing grade. And so even heavily regulated financial institutions have, while some have very good scores, and there's a number of hundreds in here, there's a number of really bad ones too. And anyone who's walking around with an app that has 10 CVSS scored vulnerabilities, low, medium, or high, definitely should be getting out there to fix it. And so what we find is unlike VaporStream, many organizations don't proactively address this. So here's another one to take a quick look at before we hear from VaporStream, and this is a retail space, right? So there's a ton of retail transactions. In fact, for many businesses, many businesses with both web and mobile interfaces, the mobile app has a higher transaction volume rate than the web does. And so here again, when we look at this, there's some pretty horrifying data that includes one app that actually has remote code execution vulnerability in it that gives it a score of less than 20. And so the good news is there are organizations like VaporStream that test for this. The bad news is there are organizations that do not. And these are production applications. So what we'd like to do is launch a poll. So you'll see in your control screen there, please click on the poll button. So polling should come up for you to fill in a choice. All right, so how do you test mobile apps today is the question. Are you using static source testing? Are you working with your IDE environment? or build commit tools? Are you doing post-build testing? Are you doing it manually? Are you outsourcing? We would like to have you click on that and make your vote. Again, that's in the polling tab that is right under the presenter screen. And it's starting to fill in. I'll give you another 15 seconds to go ahead and answer. We have a large number of folks on the phone. We'll remind you, per the section you see in front of you, you can click on the poll tab there, right under the presenter screen, and go ahead and vote. So we'll leave the poll open here for another few seconds so everybody can navigate to it. I think there's fascinating results developing within this. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the voting. So what is fascinating about the results is it's pretty much even. So some folks are using developer level security testing in the IDE or the build cycle or pre-commit. Some are doing pre-production, some are outsourcing, and the largest share are doing no security testing. How dare you? So we're glad you joined us today because we're here to help for sure. So we're going to move on from the poll, and I would like to hand it over in a second. And as we look at the reason for why mobile is different is that unlike web infrastructure that is typically tested to death, the code functionality is actually resident and runs on the phone in a separate and distinct operating system. And so that operating system has a number of extended characteristics that just don't exist in a web world. And so we need to test the code. We also need to test what's going on with the data, whether it's data in rest, resident on the device and in memory, as well as the data in motion that's transferred over the air. And a web approach to testing that information tends to be restricted to just the code functionality, where code is common on that front end between the web and the mobile environment. And if you're just using web testing and assuming mobile safe, what you wind up with is you're basically leaving yourself exposed to all of that other information that can be captured. The primary attack vector for most is, if it's not an SMS phishing attack, is data interception of data in motion or application reversing, and then looking for artifacts and forensic data inside of data at rest or data in motion. So we strongly encourage you to make sure you have complete test coverage there. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to the VaporStream team to get us rolling.
Great, thanks. Well, hello everybody. Tell you a little bit about VaporStream. We've been in business for about 10 years now. We deliver a SaaS-based secure communication platform to really the most regulated industries in the world. Now, what that really does is empower our customers to actually leverage text messaging as a sanctioned, a preferred, and a secure business tool for their communications. Now, I know some of you are kind of scratching your head because how can text be secure? Well, with our platform, our customers not only increase their efficiency, they automate their workflows, and they improve their business outcomes, all without jeopardizing their security or compliance, something email and standard SMS simply can't do for them. Let's continue here. So really what this means is that VaporStream actually provides a secure communication platform that is ephemeral and compliant, and that we uniquely protect sensitive data no matter what it is, whether you're talking PHI, PII, or strategic IP. Now, VaporStream was actually founded on the principles of security and privacy first and foremost. It's really baked into our DNA. And that's what really makes our relationship with NowSecure that much more compatible for us. And this greatly impacts not only how we design, develop our products, but even also how we market our solutions. And we really provide a secure way for enterprises and their employees to rapidly communicate and work with each other no matter where they are, whether they're collaborating with each other, whether executives are communicating with board members, whether they're communicating with regulators, partners, other third parties, clients. and really protecting that sensitive information where they can make vital decisions that drive their business every day. To give you an idea of how important these communications are, I'm sure some of you are already thinking about the different types of communications we might be thinking about. The vapor streams used for various types of scenarios. We're used for clinical collaboration and patient care coordination between doctors, nurses, pharmacies, home care coordinators, and patients and their families, where every discussion must be secure, confidential, really to meet the demands of HIPAA. You think about yourself and those conversations that you have or you want to have over text but can't with your doctor. We're used for patient outreach and engagement, as well as those pre- and post-surgical workflows when you think about the scenarios of working through the information you might need before you go into a procedure, as well as after. And this is where a series of automated HIPAA-compliant messages are sent to help patients engage in their own health care and make sure that we're sending that detailed information just in time, exactly when you need it. You know, I don't need to know that I need to stop taking my Coumadin, 2 days before I'm at a procedure when I get to the procedure and I can't have it any longer. Now, this really helps reduce missed appointments or rescheduling appointments. It helps readmissions when you're after the procedure is occurring, when you're being able to communicate afterwards and sending information out to a patient, asking what their pain levels are, how they're feeling, providing that discharge information, and being able to have bidirectional communication with them that's all secure. Now, VaporStream's also used to submit credit card, insurance cards, straight to the back-end billing systems directly from the mobile phone. So now that we're just not talking about healthcare, when you expand out to additional industries, we're used for incident notification and response. We're used for crisis and reputation management, executive and board discussions. You think about M&A, legal issues, strategy. You're looking at cyber events. You're looking at when a hurricane hits. Any of those things when you're discussing use cases and discussing communication that involves rapid response and sensitive information exchanging hands. And all of that needs to be, in many cases, captured because of regulatory demands. So to give you an idea about how important these communications are and the exposure that could happen, and how important to us that our security model is intact. Security has become our biggest differentiator in the market. And again, this is built into our DNA. The baseline feature of any messaging application out there that we have to compete with is, of course, encryption. You would expect that. It's a necessary protection, especially against the man-in-the-middle attacks that Brian mentioned earlier. This, unfortunately, is where most of the secure messaging applications focus their security efforts, and they shortcut when it comes to anything else that they may need to provide. To really protect the information that's shared across devices, you really have to go deeper and protect against what the user or the recipient may or may not do with that information. Face it, once you hit send, you really can't protect what a recipient does once they have access and whether they may cut and paste and send to somebody else. VaporStream provides advanced controls that other applications in the market simply don't. And that's where we have to make sure that those differentiators for us don't break down. One example of this is where we put the organization and the sender in control of how information is stored, how it's used, and what people can do with it at all times. Unlike native SMS, unlike email, even secure email. Other enterprise apps, consumer-based apps, you will never see a VaporStream message or its content shared out on Facebook, out on Twitter, or shared with the media or a competitor. Now that's a big statement, and we have to stand behind it. So we always ask ourselves, and this is something from a standpoint of that I recommend any app developers out there need to ask when it comes to security, is not only how locked down you are, but what else can you do? What else can you do to protect the information that you're guarding? To further protect customer data, messages, attachments, anything that's communicated across the communication channel, we are ephemeral in nature. Now what that means is that the messages will vaporize or disappear from the devices, leaving absolutely no footprint. Now this happens after a specific set time of inactivity, but senders also have the ability to shred on demand. Now what this is equivalent to is that old email recall paradigm that is supposed to work, that we could all never get to work in the past. But this is critical when you think about all of the types of information that is shared over mobile devices today, and especially in an application like ours. When you're thinking about an image of a patient, a security code, or a financial transaction, you really don't want that to remain on the device. And this is the type of information that we work with testing ourselves, but also with NowSecure to make sure that that can't be accessed. Now lastly, as an enterprise-level app, we also can't just go around letting information disappear either. Our customers must be able to prove compliance and respond to legal demands at any time. With VaporStream, our customers can choose to archive a single copy of a message to a client-designated repository of record for access for reporting and client purposes, compliance purposes. And they must be able to do that. So although we perform our own testing, extensive testing as you'd expect, we're under no illusion that the mobile attack surface that Brian described earlier, that we can cover every scenario. We knew when we went into this that, and with the heightened cyber attacks that continue to evolve, that we also wanted to enroll a third party to challenge us, to put us to the test, to make sure that we lived up to the promise and to the brand that we've grown to build, that our customers rely on us for and expect out of us. So we needed to figure out exactly what our requirements were that basically we couldn't cover on our own, but that we also wanted to be double-checked on, but also who we wanted to form a long-term partnership with. So for that, I want to turn it over to Avi and let him go into some of those details.
All right. Thank you, Christy.
Sure.
And if you think for a second about your role in your own organization and my role in mine, I hope if the webinar is distributed correctly, that there's at least some of you who are responsible for app development. Now, you've just heard Christy, and you know that in my world, salespeople, marketing people cannot speak for 5 seconds without saying the word secure at least 3 times. We're not just an app company. We're an app company that helps our customers, companies in regulated industries, stay compliant and stay secure. So every day, as part of my job, I'm explicitly called to task to help reassure the salespeople who say the words and the marketing people who write the words, and our CEO and our board of directors and investors that our security is real, that our app is truly secure. And that is a part of what drove us very, very early on to start working with NowSecure and get that verified. But don't let that mislead you. anyone today who is in charge of developing an app is implicitly required to make sure that the application is secured. I actually have the good fortune to be asked about it explicitly every day, so I can't escape from thinking about it. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are responsible for putting up mobile apps, and maybe security is not front and center all the time, which leads to not thinking about it every day. And you don't want the first day that you think about it to be the day that your app is the cause of a breach, which is really what we're here today and what we all would like to avoid. And there were several reasons that we chose a partnership with NowSecure as an important part of what we do to keep our applications secured. We get very, very extensive black box testing and penetration testing of the app and the platform. Our app, like most other apps, is not standalone on the mobile device. It does communicate back to a platform. It communicates back to servers and to repositories of information that we have, that we maintain. And it is important to test all of these components. So you want your app tested, you want the communication channels between the app and the platform tested, and in light of how these communication channels are built, you want the platform itself tested to make sure that you don't have a vulnerability sneaking in on you there, maybe not in the app itself, but in the door that you open for the app to speak to your servers and directly into your servers. So this was something that was very important to us and that we get with NowSecure. Now, the rest of this goes to resources, and I think it's worth it to pause for a while and talk about the kind of resources that you need in order to do this testing. So testing is always important. We have software developers. We have a QA team. And obviously, rule number one of testing, the people who develop the code are not the people to test it because people are often blind to their own mistakes. So for functional testing, we have a separate in-house full-time QA team that does the functional testing. But if you think about what you need for security testing, it gets a little bit more complicated because we're talking here about skills in testing the app that are really much more similar to the skills of software engineers and software developers, and yet you want this to be separate and independent from your development team. So unless your QA team is a QA team on steroids, super duper, very skilled in all kinds of development tasks, there is a little bit of a gap there. Right? You can't really use your own developers to test because you want it to be independent, and the people who do the functional QA don't always have the right skill mix. They have great skills for functional QA, but not for security testing. Now, a lot of unfortunate salespeople who try to call me know that whenever someone calls me to sell a service that has to do with software development, I usually shut them down pretty quickly and tell them, we are a software development company. Developing software is what we do. We do not outsource it. We do it ourselves. And here comes the exception. I need people who have the skills of software engineers and are not my software engineers to do this testing. We are not a huge company. We do not keep that on staff 24/7. And this is where NowSecure really comes in with very highly skilled staff, dedicated staff for the platforms, because you need to know what you're doing on iOS and on Android if you're going to do this testing, and a team that comes in to certify us every year, yet we don't have to keep them on our payroll year-round because they're NowSecure staff, and when our certification is done, they can move on to do other things. So getting that level of dedicated staff is something that we get from NowSecure and is very important to us. Much, much easier than keeping staff, but still a bit of a pain, is the kind of equipment that comes in. Right? There are certain tests, and I don't want to step over the line because these are really NowSecure specific skills, but there are certain tests that will require a jailbroken iOS device. I don't keep those. If you walk into our development office, you will notice that we are a little bit running out of desktop real estate to keep all the many, many, many devices on both platforms that we use for development and testing. I don't want to have to replicate that and start adding to that jailbroken devices or rooted Android devices and update them every year to the latest and greatest. Again, having NowSecure come in with these devices and the skills and the maintenance of these devices really, really help. And then on the outcome end for our choice of NowSecure is the kind of output that we get. What you will see visible to the world is our badge and certificate, which is great. That's what we want. We want to be able to tell everyone, and I want to be able to tell people internally as well, that we're secure. But what you don't see from the outside, what you will only see as NowSecure customer, is the level of detailed reports that we get every year from the certification with actionable findings, things that we can take to our next development cycle to bolster security even more, to try and prepare for things that are coming down the pipe that we haven't really thought about yet. And in come this team with the knowledge and the skills to bring that to our attention. It makes things a lot simpler when you have a shopping list to go down to bolster your security rather than just say, go and make it more secure. So we chose NowSecure a number of years ago. I can't remember off the top of my head if it was 4 or 5 years ago. And we chose a partner that is known and reputable. There are many, many places. I always note with satisfaction when we say to a prospect or to a CISO at a prospect that the app is NowSecure tested, and they nod and say, yeah, I heard about NowSecure. I trust that test. We get dedicated teams to do our certification every year, and these are people with experience. We know that because some of them come back, and we know that they have been there for some time, and it's also obvious in the quality of the work that we get. Now, the NowSecure test is a black box test, and that's important because one, the black box simulates best what your most likely threat, a hacker coming in from the outside without inside information, will see. So it's a very real live test. At the same time, it doesn't require us to disclose source code, and it really doesn't interfere with the way we build. We just take an available production build, the latest one, we throw it at them to test, and they test it from the outside completely. Another thing very, very important that we get from NowSecure in the NowSecure Auto product is between our annual certifications, we have a utility that allows us to have our product automatically tested for all kinds of known vulnerabilities. And that's important to protect us from mistakes that we can make, from new threats that pop up that were not known during the certification. And it really closes the loop on the savings that I talked about when I said we don't have to keep a software engineer level team with security testing capabilities year-round because we do the annual certification. Well, this really, really bolsters the defense around that, because even though we don't have the people on our payroll year-round, we do get the testing year-round. And as you'll see in a minute, we completely baked that into our release process so that we don't blunder and make a mistake or miss an important update. So we started with our initial certification back in 2014. We have been renewing our NowSecure certifications every year, and that is from what we get. The process is basically identical to the initial certification. We start from the beginning every time. We put the product out there, and it is put through the entire ringer every time. We get our certification badge, which is very useful for sales and marketing, and we also get our detailed reports. And if there's anything there that is not at the highest level that it can be, we just work that into our product releases. And as you know, security is an ever-changing field. There'll always be some useful recommendations there. Once the annual certification is done, we do have our product already configured in NowSecure Auto, which is it's a really beautifully automated tool. It takes our QA team roughly 15 minutes to run for every release. We would sometimes run it on our internal releases as well, but definitely nothing goes to Google Play or the App Store before it has been through NowSecure Auto, so we know that we didn't break anything critical. Whenever we're asked for validation, and validation is a tricky question for mobile apps because, for data centers, the questions that you're going to be asked. You're going to be asked, where's your data center, and is it ISO 27001 certified? That standard is pretty well known. I will not get into how detailed it is, but the perception among security professionals is that if you meet that standard, you're good. I don't know of an ISO standard or a CMMI standard or any standard for mobile app development that is considered at this point the industry standard. But I've also never been in a situation where a customer or prospect asked if our app is secure and tested, and we provided the NowSecure certificate, and we're told that that's not sufficient. In our experience, it's been 10 for 10. Always works when there is any doubt, and we work with CISOs and security teams in organizations that are very, very sensitive to their information, and as Christy explained, are subject to many different regulations. The NowSecure certificate simply works. It is something that is accepted as proof that the app is sufficiently secure. The result of all of that is sales differentiation. Very, very simply put, you go into some of these potential deals, and you might be up against competition that's not certified, and this could just make the difference between moving forward with the deal or not moving forward with it. You will find our security badge that we have here on the screen on our website, on our sales documents. Some of our sales staff put this even in their email signatures. It's very reassuring, and it's something that is very useful to have out there. Now, we're often asked, as a company that specializes in secure applications, what we recommend for sister companies. I'm asked in speaking engagements and in industry events, what are the recommendations? And there are many things that you need to do, and there are many ideas, and different people will have different ideas about what's most important. This is my short list for the limited time that we have. I would say designing for security is important. We're here to talk about security testing, and that's great. But if you want to pass the test and if you want security to run deep, you really need to consider security early and often and build it into the design and have a development team that always asks, is this secure enough? Once you design early, it's time to test early and often, especially now that we have the ability with NowSecure Auto to run our own tests anytime we want. There's really no reason to not test from your first prototype. The moment you have your minimally viable product that comes out of your agile development, test it, run it through. Get those reports, get those recommendations, and start to fix it right out of the gate rather than wait for the end or wait for someone to ask. Waiting for someone to ask is never a good idea. Once you have a secure product, incorporating the security testing that you do into the regular QA cycle is very important for two reasons that I've already mentioned before. The standards change, new vulnerabilities, new threats emerge. If you don't test for them, you will not know. They might have not come up on last month's report, but they will now. And shockingly, people make mistakes. You could have a perfectly secure piece of code, and you could have a developer's oversight simply turn off or break an important part of your security. And this is really where the repeated testing comes in. Last but not least, sooner or later, someone will ask some very detailed questions about app security. I'm sure at least some of the people on the call have already been through those customer and prospect security audits. Those audits come, they're long, they're exhausting, they have hundreds of questions in them, and saying we are certified and providing that certification proof is important. One thing that you can do in anticipation of the audits is document the things that you already do. Just having a process is great. When you are up against an audit, you will need to provide documentation of that process, and if you haven't done it for 3 years, then it's probably too late. So my last tip is look at all of the security procedures that you already have in place, document them. They'll save you in your next audit on top of your certification. And Brian, it is back to you.
All right, Avi, thanks very much. I think it was very insightful from both of you on how, on the high value secure messaging and collaboration that you deliver and the very painstaking approach you've taken to security and privacy and compliance through your application, and all the way through from developer training, the way you run your developer process, to building security in, to pen testing and using automated AppSec testing. So before we roll into Q&A, and I'll remind you, you can ask questions using the Q&A tab below your presentation screen. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the things that Avi's been leveraging there and how NowSecure can help you down that path. So as both our speakers stated, we come from a mobile forensics background. So since 2009 and the advent of the modern smartphone, we've been driving security research and mobile forensics into the marketplace. We started out with mobile forensics and pen testing, moved into tools to automate that progression, as many of our customers have as well. And so those tools and those expertise are now used by many of our customers. And as we said earlier, critical requirements are to test the code, the data at rest, and the data in motion. And we actually take a binary-driven approach. As Avi said, you don't want to be sharing your source code outside the building if you can help it. So why not use automated tools that can actually test the binary that better represents the final actual shipping product in a black box environment, and make sure you get full coverage of the code as well as data at rest and data in motion throughout that cycle. Now, the NowSecure platform actually is a combination of products and services. And as VaporStream's using, we have our pen testing service and expert training services, as well as the product portfolio and the NowSecure Auto tool that they are using as part of their dev and build process. We also have, if you have an analyst team, we have a deep dive workstation tool you can use to test really complicated things like IoT and multi-factor authentication. We also give you the ability to monitor production apps in the App Store, whether it's the apps you build or buy or leverage and use in your organization, because they might just be free as well. And so this combination of services and product enables organizations to get that full 360-degree coverage. And so what we find with a number of organizations is they're really trying to shift left. And we can help you do that by enabling an annual pen test if you're not already doing it. Something like 40% of our poll at the beginning here was doing no testing, and then about 20-some% was doing outsourced pen testing or an annual periodic pen test, and we could love to help you with that, much as we have done with VaporStream. And as you look now to move security left from being an outsourced task to either a security role or a development role, you can bring automated tooling into that tool chain and plug it into not just your production environment, but into your build and test environment. So you can actually take your build coming out of Jenkins or Buddy Build, Circle CI, what have you, automatically run your security test in parallel with the functional tests, and then spit the results back out into Jira or another ticketing and issue system, which automatically routes them back into the developer. And so this round tripping then allows us to also monitor the app in production. So if you think about really protecting your organization, you want to monitor the app in production, you want to make sure you automate the testing during the development lifecycle, and then do the annual periodic pen test as well, and that ensures you have complete and total coverage throughout the life cycle. So in terms of the risks and the scoring, I realize this is kind of a small eye chart, but sensitive data exposure, such as user IDs, passwords, account information, find that information, give you recommendations on how to fix it. We map to regulatory standards. So if you're in government, it's NIAP. If you're in banking, it's FFIEC and FISA. And so on and so forth, no matter what industry you might be, and we have people from lots of different industries here. We help you with that shortcut of mapping the vulnerabilities, the CVSS scored vulnerabilities we have to these different compliance regimes. And that detailed information covers the entire application, and there's development level remediation instructions in there. So the security team can work with the dev team to quickly get issues resolved and move forward in getting a product into release production that is of the highest security and quality. So NowSecure Auto plugs into the dev tool chain. You can run it on demand. You can run it in the cloud or on-prem. For most organizations, they'll actually plug it into the build system to run periodically or every day and automatically route the tickets through. It also combines dashboarding and statistics and analytics, so you can look across your entire portfolio and really get a vulnerability, security, and privacy management view across all your application testing at every stage in the software lifecycle. Our NowSecure services team can come in and do a pen test for you. We do hundreds of level pen tests per year. We've done over 10,000 pen tests over the year, and we're happy to help you with that. We could also work with you to take advantage of our experts with training, program setup, shift left strategies, developer training strategies, and so on and so forth. So we're really a one-stop shop when it comes to both product and service to help your organization. Now, when I first started working here, most people were running our tools in isolation, empowering the analysts. Today, we have integrations with a myriad of tools, build tools, app stores, app management tools, a lot of people using Hockey app, for example, and then plugging into vulnerability and issue tracking systems and even production MDM environments. And so really, we've taken the approach that human-driven pen testing is great. We can do that for you. We can give you tools to help your humans do pen testing if it's not our humans. But where at all possible, just plug automation into the tool chain and let the tool chain do the work for you and just focus on the output and the results and tracking performance and improvements over time. And so much as we've seen here with VaporStream, organizations move from manual testing to pre-release testing into on-demand and fully automated testing. And that really allows you to dramatically raise the bar in terms of security, but it also allows you to increase velocity. If you've got 10, 20, 30, 50 apps to test and you're doing builds every day, you're not going to be able to hire the 20 staff to be able to do all that testing. Why not let the systems do the work for you in your organization? And so with that, what we'd like to do is ask a final poll here. And so you can click on the poll tab there, and we will pop the poll up to you in front of you so that we can get a sense of this second question. So while Ashley's pulling it up, we're interested in what you heard today and some quick feedback on today. So Ashley, are you able to expose the next poll, please, in the background? And so our second poll here is really about how you feel about mobile app sec testing now that you've heard about the VaporStream strategy as well as technologies that can help you evolve. I can't see if the second poll is live or not at this point. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and skip the poll and move on now into our Q&A session. Once again, I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us. We have a couple of questions that have come in. I'll go ahead and read the questions, and we'll route them to the right people, be it myself or Avi or Christy. So first question, I guess, is me. Actually, I think could be both myself and Avi. So please elaborate on how behavioral tests run by NowSecure better the security of VaporStream versus static testing alone. Also, are behavioral tests executed as part of the SDLC, or can NowSecure only execute static scans in development? So, Avi, do you want to start with, as you're using auto in your test environment, are you also using static tools, or how do you see what we test versus static tools working for you?
All right. So, what I said previously about the power of black box testing applies to auto as well, right? We do upload the binary and we run the test on it, but it does not take any specific effort on behalf of the development team to do the test. There's no hooks to implant in there, no code changes required whatsoever. So that maintains the low load on the development team. Of course, there is a load when time comes to fix an issue that comes in from the tool, but it's something that gets much like the annual pen testing and expert review. It becomes something that the QA team can just trigger, and the reports just trickle into Jira. That has been our specific experience.
That's great. So I'll talk more broadly about the product. So we do static, dynamic, and behavioral testing. What our behavioral testing actually is by running static, we can see what the app is supposed to do. We actually take the binary we reverse it back to source, and we use that to gather information and intelligence about the app, and we can often find vulnerabilities to start. We can also find third-party libraries that are used and the intentions of the app. We then actually load the app and run it on real devices. So in running it on the real device, we then make a dynamic path and click and navigate our way through an automated engine through the application to get through and test that, and that's how we find all the endpoints it communicates to. That's how we identify the data rest, data in motion exposures, and things like that. And then our behavioral testing is actually an attacker test tool. So inside of the core of our product, we basically take all our learnings of every known mobile vulnerability along with what we learned from the static and the dynamic paths, and we actually actively attack the app. So for example, we test certificate pinning 4 different ways with self-signed certs, unsigned certs, alternative certs. We're looking inside the encrypted SSL tunnel, not only to make sure you're using SSL properly, but actually is there clear text unencrypted inside of it, and so on and so forth. We look for literally thousands of potential vulnerabilities, things like cooking failures, cross-site scripting, and all kinds of stuff. So the behavioral approach is unique to NowSecure, and it's done in a fully automated fashion. So for the average customer, an automated test run takes 7 minutes in the SDLC cycle. So do your build, download the binary, launch your functional test, then launch your security test. So with that, I think there's one more question here, and then we're going to wind down. Let me get back here. This is an interesting question. So what other secure development tools do you use at VaporStream as well as NowSecure? Do you do source code quality? Are you also using SAS for the build cycle? Do you do any of the IDE tools or plugins?
Right. So let me take that. Obviously, there is testing needs to be a whole suite. Security testing needs to be a whole suite. I don't want anyone to walk away from here thinking that NowSecure is everything. And I already started to mention that planning for security in the design and testing for security inside the code and outside the code is something that we always do. I didn't come here with pre-approval to endorse any other specific tools, so I will refrain from doing that. But I'll say that at a minimum, everyone should scan source code automatically for known vulnerabilities, scan external libraries for updates and known issues, and when those updates become critical. That is something that's very, very easy to trip on because often you'll have a library just sitting there and doing your job, but if you don't specifically check for it, you will not know that there is a critical update that needs to be applied in production yesterday. And last but not least, maybe not directly for security, but often falls under the same audits, your open source scanners. Super important because as much as you say to the development team, not to drop you into some of the not commercial friendly open source licenses, it is often very tempting. And sometimes, even secondhand, someone could take a code snippet that they found in a forum and they don't know that it's not public domain. So that's another thing that can create a different kind of risk for you. So just a short list of the things that you should be doing on top of black box security and pen testing.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Avi. I want to thank both of you, Avi and Christy, for joining us today on this NowSecure and VaporStream webinar. We appreciate everyone joining us and providing feedback. I'll remind you, you'll get a follow-up question feedback as we wind down. And welcome your feedback on what to do next. Our next webinar will be on DevSecOps and pen testing, and you'll hear more from us coming up at the end of November, beginning of December. So thanks again for joining us today, everyone. And Avi and Christy, we wish you all the best, and we'll speak to you later.